Amit Malviya of the Bharatiya Janata Party is also with the phone line with us right now. Mr. Malviya, what is the link between George Soros and the Apple security threat notifications that members of the opposition received yesterday, sir?
It's quite a coincidence that a handful of members of parliament from the opposition ranks alleged that they've received a certain notification. The notifications seemed to be from Apple, and Apple was quick to clarify that some of these could be false alarms. Apple also went on to say that there could be someone powerful behind it, not necessarily a state. If you look at the further communication that has come in the name of Apple, it mentions an NGO called Access Now. If you look at the credentials of Access Now, it's an NGO that is funded by George Soros Foundation. It runs a network of organizations here in India which work on issues like internet freedom, feminism, and so on and so forth. Quite unrelated, but fairly ideologically motivated. Their partner here is the same web portal which fronted the Pegasus story, which was a sponsored story by a bunch of international publications, which was championed by none other than Rahul Gandhi, who made several statements, held press conferences, and also held up the parliament. And eventually, when the investigation was sought to be done by a Supreme Court-appointed committee, he did not submit his phone for investigation. The same set of members of parliament have now come out and are vociferously talking about their phones being hacked. This noisy bunch of members of parliament who politically may not be as relevant to the scheme of things, but have an outsized presence in media, are the ones who've got it. Now, if you link Access Now, the network that it runs, the editor of the web portal that ran the Pegasus story being on the board of Access Now, and link up this entire network, alacrity of Rahul Gandhi to come out and do a press conference and allege that there is an attempt by the government to snoop or keep a watch on opposition is fairly orchestrated. We've seen this in the past. And if you connect all these dots, it's quite obvious that George Soros, who's committed over $1 billion to undermine the present government and ensure regime change, is at work. And the opposition, led by Rahul Gandhi, is a willing prop in the hands of George Soros. And we see this play out. It's a sinister ploy to undermine India's democracy, to undermine the choices that people have made through these orchestrated campaigns. It's a devious campaign, but unfortunately, the opposition has now decided to collaborate with them, use a lot of foreign fund and money and power and agencies and media to fight Indian elections. But I'm sure people of India are wiser, and we'll ensure that these forces are defeated.
So you're saying that this is a devious campaign with a global phone manufacturer like Apple in on it?
Well, what I'm saying is that this is a global plan with billionaire George Soros funding this entire operation, and NGOs that work with Apple are part of this entire ecosystem. And when the government of India investigates this matter, as it has said clearly yesterday, and Apple will be asked to cooperate, I'm sure questions will also be asked of these NGOs like Access Now and the network they run here in India. Perhaps the web portal whose editor is on the board of Access Now will also be sort of questioned. And the entire investigation will look at all these aspects very closely. But what you cannot deny is that George Soros' hand is right behind these messages and the follow-up messages that have come. They are clearly meant to create a storm here in India, an orchestrated one, and people close to George Soros, Rahul Gandhi and the others are sort of playing by a book or rules set by the man who's funding this entire operation.
Mr. Malviya, yesterday the government was, of course, citing the fact that these threat notifications reached users and their devices across 150 countries, including Armenia, including those in Uganda as well. So this could be possibly some algorithm malfunction. Today you're suggesting it's a sinister plot.
Well, there are two aspects to it. There could definitely be an algorithm malfunction, but what follows after that is something that is fairly questionable. And Apple will have to clarify, because if you see their statement, it wasn't definitive. What they said, though, is that they do not name any state behind it, but someone or somebody as powerful and resourceful as a state could also be behind it. And these countries that you mentioned, let's not forget, George Soros' network spans around the world, and there are several countries in which they operate, and they have, at different points in time, attempted regime change. So it's not something that is beyond the realms of imagination or beyond the realm of what could be operation to undermine India's sovereignty and our democratic fabric here.
So in conclusion, Mr. Malviya, before I let you go, so you're suggesting that this was not a case of a possible technical hack, but a case of an organizational hack inside Apple?
It's perhaps not even a case of hack. It's a case of a lot of noise around the possible hack, and of course using the standard protocols that you would find on Apple's technical pages to create a storm here in India. So it's perhaps a much sinister design at play, using a credible and a very wide-ranging handphone manufacturer. Let's not forget that India has now weaned away a lot of Apple manufacturing from China to India, and Foxconn, which is one of the biggest manufacturers, has set up a big shop here in India. So there could be a lot of things at work. It could be geopolitics. It could be people like George Soros. It could be a combination of both, and of course a willing opposition, which is quite inclined to be part of this entire campaign or project as it is.
But there are others, aren't there, Mr. Malviya? There are others who are not in public life who also receive these threat notifications. Mr. Samir Saran, for instance, of the ORF, who did go on record to say he'd received it as well.
Well, in that case, there are several in the BJP and in the ruling party also who have received this, but none of them are making noise about it. I did mention yesterday that people close to Union Minister Piyush Goyal, his own ID has received one such notification.
These are politicians, you're saying? These are members, representatives, public representatives in public life?
Of course, absolutely.
From the BJP?
So, but the ones that are making the noise are all from opposition, and they are the usual suspects.
Okay. Mr. Malviya, thank you so much for joining us. With, of course, your comments on this. Now, the BJP, of course, alleging that there is a big sinister design, a plot as far as those threat notifications that members of the opposition claimed they'd received on their phones and devices yesterday, Apple devices, their iPhones, which they claimed was basically the government snooping on them. Now, remember that this all broke out yesterday. Politics has been, of course, simmering over it ever since. At least 13 opposition MPs allege phone hacking by the government agencies after a threat alert from Apple.